Hi everybody, it's great to be back here again tomorrow. It's Friday, and before I get down to my Torah lesson, I just want to share with you an amazing experience. Yesterday I was at a wedding at the Tomb of the Patriarchs. My wonderful nephew, Meir Konikov, let him have a wonderful life with his new wife, Dvora Blanc. And they got married at Marat HaMachpelah, the beautiful Tomb of the Patriarchs. So what an amazing wedding. So this lesson will be in their honor, this new wonderful couple. But I want to show you a story. Yesterday, my niece-to-be, because yesterday she wasn't my niece yet, Dvora decided to go to the Temple Mount. Before her wedding, she wanted to connect to Hashem on the holiest place on earth. When she goes to the Temple Mount, what happens? Her lips begin to move a little bit. And she immediately was arrested by the police saying she's praying on the Temple Mount. What is the problem? You're Jewish, girl. You can't pray on the Temple Mount. Only non-Jews are allowed to pray on the Temple Mount. Something is very crazy, but she's arrested. But Baruch Hashem, thank God, there was mercy laid upon this wonderful bride, and they let her out to go make her wedding in the Tomb of the Patriarchs. So she was let free that day. But something's crazy. Of course, my little sense of humor, what's going on? This is a true story. My niece, my new niece, and my nephew have a wedding, and she's arrested. His poor bride is arrested because she goes to the Temple Mount to pray. This is just one small story of being in the land that we have to go through difficult trials and tribulations. Of course, things are wild here in Israel. It's been a crazy couple of days. I was supposed to go away for Shabbat, but I'm here in Itamar. Why can't I go away for Shabbat? Because there is threats of rioting. There's been a shooting, a drive-by shooting now on someone driving by because a terrible thing took place yesterday. I don't even want to mention what's going on here. Violence, and it's terrible. The violence is terrible. It's not a Jewish way. And unfortunately, all this violence and crazy things happening here is a result of a lack of control. Things are just breaking at their seams, and something has to happen to calm things down and to bring humanity back to normal way of life. And the answer is Torah. Only through Torah, the study of Torah, truly finding the values of Torah, we can really, truly bring peace to the world. Nothing else will work. The Torah has the power, the beauty, the boundaries to really straighten out everybody. All you have to do is study Torah. And it will open your heart, it will cleanse your heart, it will purify you. The world needs it so badly. And they need the people of Israel to fulfill its goal as being a light to the nations. And therefore, this week's portion, Parashat V'et, it's an amazing Torah portion. Not only mentions again the 10 Commandments, it's full of all about entering the land of Israel. Moshe Rabbeinu praying to see the land of Israel. I mean, he couldn't go in, but he wanted to enter, but God said you can see the land. It shows how much love there must be for the land of Israel. And this week's portion is Nachamu, God consoling us after destruction of our temples, after such a difficult period of Tisha B'Av, and now we are building our new temples, right? Our new temple. We have to work towards all this. It comes from through the Torah and our adhering to the Torah. This week's portion opens up, if we look in a few different verses, not opens up, but I want to bring down and show you how this importance of the people of Israel, being a light to the nations, is so strong in the Torah. If you look in chapter 7, verse number 6 and 7, Ki Am Kadosh, God is saying you are a holy nation. I chose you to be a treasured nation, God says to the people of Israel. I chose you from all the nations of the world. And then it says in verse 7, not because you're more in numbers than the nations of the world, God chose you, because you are few in number. Here we see that we're chosen. What did God choose us for? And I said this so many classes already. I have to repeat myself so many times. But of course, to be a light, to show goodness in humanity, not because we're better than thou, because we have an important purpose of showing love and true Torah to the world. If you look in Deuteronomy, go back a little bit to chapter 4. It says in verse number 25. Open up your Tanakh, please. Ki tolid banim, when you will have children, uvenei banim, and grandchildren. Have 4 grandchildren. Thank God. Bli anera. And the noshatem ba'aretz, and you will grow old in the land. But unfortunately, the other part of the verse is not too happy, and you will do terrible ways of making idols and bad things, making God angry. And then it talks about us being sent out to exile. You read verse number 25 to 31, and then what happens at the end? If you look in verse number 30, right? In our trouble, we will have all these misfortune. And then it says, at the end of days, you return ad Hashem Elokecha v'shavta. You return ad Hashem Elokecha, and you return to Hashem. In Hebrew, it's amazing. What does it mean v'shavta? You return ad. The 2 letters ad in Hebrew refer to the letters of Shema. Right? Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. If you look at the word Shema, Shin Mem Ayin, which is the third letter of the first word of Shema, of announcing the oneness of God, is an Ayin. And Echad, meaning one, the last letter is Dalid. These two letters, Ayin, Dalid, which have to be written in the Torah in large letters. Again, they stress the fact that Ad, we must come to God. Ad, a witness, realizing the heavens and the earth will testify against us. If God, if we leave God, at the same time, we have to testify to our belief in the oneness of God. This we go way back to Abraham. It says in Abraham, I mentioned this in the past, Vayavo Avram ba'aretz, Abraham came to the land of Israel, Ad Mekom Shechem, to the place of Shechem. And that's why I traveled to go to this wedding yesterday. I went from here. Itamar is situated in Shechem. We went all the way down south to Hebron. Ad, again, is the Ayin Dal, those two letters which represent Ad, being a witness, a testimony. Represents Ad, coming back to Hashem. It's here, returning. You return to God. Abraham returned to God in the land of Israel. That's where you could find God. Outside the land of Israel, you really can't find God so well. We have to be in the land, close to Hashem to find God. That's why we need the temple to stand. The prophecy will return. This is the way you can really feel God in the land of Israel. The land of Israel makes one wise. We must come back to the land. And that's what Abraham did. He comes back to the land. He comes back to Ad. Ad. If we take this further even, and we see in, I mentioned before, in the end of Deuteronomy, chapter 30, if you look at verse number 2, it says, Vishavta ad Hashem Elokecha, right? You return to Hashem. Here again, the same word is used a few times in verse number 3, in verse number 2. You'll see the key word ad always refers to returning to something, coming back. Something very powerful in those two letters. This all I want to, again, as an introduction to connect to this special day. Today, we're celebrating a special day. Today is Tu B'Av. It's a holiday, I mentioned, a holiday for Israel. Why is it a holiday for? There are special things that took place today. It's a romantic day. That's why there was a wedding last night. But this holiday, what took place on this special day, this holiday? And the answer is, we look in the Mishnah, in the tractate of Ta'anit, in the 8th Mishnah of the last tractate, of the last chapter, it says that there weren't great days for Israel like the days of Tu B'Av, which is today, the 15th day of the month of Av, and the Day of Atonement, Yom Kippurim. Why? Because the women, the girls, were accustomed to go out dressed in white. And they would always these beautiful white dresses. But they weren't their own dresses. Why? They would borrow them from one another because they didn't want to embarrass the poor girls that didn't have money to buy their own dress. So they would all wear these white dresses. Make sure the dresses were put in the ritual bath in case certain girls weren't on the same religious level of knowing the laws of purity. So they all made sure that the garments were purified beforehand. And they would go out in the vineyards. And what would they do in the vineyards? They would go out and they would say to a possible, groom, they were looking to get married. They would say, don't look on the external things, right? Don't look on the beauty of someone. Because we know it says in Proverbs, Sheker achen v'hevel hayofi, it's a lie, the beauty, and it's all a lie. What's the most important thing is the fear of God. They would say, pay attention to the fear of God. Pay attention for a good family the girl comes from. Don't look at the beauty. Don't look at the external way. Doesn't mean they weren't beautiful on the outside. I'm sure they were, but they were trying to say that goes away, disappears. But look for the internal beauty of somebody. That's the most important thing. What's on the inside. That's the true beauty. When you marry someone, make sure they're gorgeous on the inside. That's very important. And what was this all about? This took place on the 15th day of the month of Av, trying to get the girls to marry their husbands. Also on the Day of Atonement. I can understand on the 15th day of Av, after, again, difficult days, the 9th of Av being commemorating the terrible, terrible sin of the spies took place and destruction of temples later on. So finally, when this difficult period is over, this week Shabbat is Nachama, we can console ourselves. Wow, finding brides, those who are not married will find themselves wonderful brides. It's like a reunion with the bride. Wonderful. But why was this done on the Day of Atonement? Why would such a thing be done on the Day of Atonement? Here you're supposed to be praying in the synagogue. How did you have time to dance in the vineyards over there? And the answer is, it's so powerful in that today it's very connected to the Day of Atonement, because the bride, when the husband meets his wife and they finally find each other. Okay, Dvorah and Meir, last night was a great wedding. But that special gift of a husband and wife meeting together represents, of course, Israel meeting God, the connection between God, the wedding between God and Israel. And this is reflected to in the rest of the Mishnah, which talks about King Solomon. His mother made him a crown on his wedding day. What was that? The Mishnah says that was the day of receiving Torah, because under the bridle, the Mount of Sinai was the canopy of the bride and groom of God and Israel, and they reunited that day. So really, on Yom Kippur reflects the Day of Atonement, that God is forgiving us for being in exile and bringing us back. In exile meaning in many ways, when we sin, but of course we read about here now in the sixth portion, when we sin, it has its implications, it has its, it has its results, and they get thrown out of the land. But eventually a bride returns to its groom to meet, reconnect, and that connection has to do, there's just like the connection of a bride and groom of Tu B'Av. So we see, of course, that very special connection of those two special days. But there were more things that took place on Tu B'Av. What else took place? We know that this day was a day where the desert, when the Jewish people were wandering 40 years in the desert, the 9th of Av was a terrible day, because they would all have to lay in the graves, and in the morning 15,000 people wouldn't wake up. This went on for 40 years, until finally on the 9th of Av, on the 40th year, everyone went to sleep and everyone woke up. Something wasn't right. So they thought maybe they made a mistake in counting. And they waited till the 15th day of the month when the moon was full already, and they realized they counted right, but there was no more decree, no more people were dying. So this happened on the 15th day of the month of Av. The decree was nullified, and people were now going to live and enter the land of Israel, which was amazing. So it's again connected to that reunion of God. He's going to bring this generation back to the land, and that happened on the 15th day of the month of Av as well. Besides that, something else happened. The evil king Yerovam, he set up, we know, guards, not allowing people to go. You can read about it in the book of Kings. He didn't allow people to go to the Temple Mount, to go to Jerusalem, right? But what happened was, another king came along and he nullified his decree, Hoshea ben Elah. He nullified that on the 15th day of Av. So again, it shows us it's opening up something connecting to the temple on that same day. Wow. Another great thing happened. We know the tribe of Benjamin was almost wiped out. And it was the 15th day of the month of Av, near the community of Shiloh, where the brides and the grooms met of Benjamin, the remnants of the tribe, were able to find themselves brides in the vineyards of Shiloh. Wow. So again, saving a tribe of Israel. All this is this part of repentance, and we see a reunion of something to console, to come back, to reunite. All this happens on the day of the 15th of Av. What did I mention yet? Another thing took place on the 15th of Av was that we know the times of the tribes, they weren't allowed to marry. Different tribes weren't allowed to intermarry. Why? Because in times when they were dividing the land of Israel, the portions of the land had to be exact to each tribe. And therefore, each tribe married within its own tribe. Because what happened was, if a girl inherited, like the daughters of Tzlofchad, if they inherit the father's land, and they marry someone else, they bring over their inheritance to their husband with them, and therefore it will take away land from the tribe. So therefore, during that period of dividing the tribe, until the land was divided according to the tribes, it wasn't allowed. There was no intermarriage between tribes allowed. But on Tu B'Av, after the land was divided up already, that was changed, and they were allowed to intermarry with one another. So it was like another amazing thing. All of Israel is out to reunite again with one another. It's another amazing thing. And another thing that took place on the 15th day of the month of Av was the sacrifice of bringing wood for the temple sacrifices. We know they would bring in something called the wood offering. They would bring wood, cut down wood, until the month, the 15th of the Av, because from here the power of the sun starts to weaken as we head towards the fall. And therefore, it had to be, the wood had to dry out. Enough time for it to dry out and not get wormy, because wood that became wormy with worms was not allowed to be used on the temple. So this, what we see, was a special celebration, because it ended as the period of bringing wood, again connected to the temple. So we see everything we're talking about. A bride and groom relationship in Hebron yesterday, coming together. And of course, God and Israel coming together connects with the chosenness of the people of Israel to come together with God, to be able to be light to the nations. All this is connected to the 15th day of the month of Av. Absolutely amazing, the power of this day. Let us say, after being very, very hard 24 hours with things that are going on in the country and around the world, the violence must stop, and love and unity has to come about. And that comes about by realizing our place as the people of Israel, to be able to reach out a hand in love to humanity and show the world what it is to be light of nations, and really that's how we're going to build our temple. And that's how we're going to be strong in our land. Through love, we're going to be victorious. Doesn't mean we're going to give up on our important principles. In no way. We're tough, we're strong. But we have to show the light of God and do everything in our power to do things through love. That's how it works. But anyway, Shabbat Shalom, Besorot Tovot, Yeshuot, Benechamot.